All right, Rose, I think we can probably get started.
All right. Hello, everyone. Again, thank you for those of you that were right on the dot. My name is Rose Gerber. I'm the Director of Patient Advocacy and Education for COA. And joining me today for this special webinar are my colleagues, Nick Ferreyros, the Managing Director of Policy, Advocacy, and Communication for COA, and James Lee, who's our Director of State Regulation and Policy. Some of you may have joined our advocacy chat last month where we first introduced you to this event called the Sit in My Chair event. Because this event is so special and we think it's such an incredible opportunity, we did want to add a special webinar. And again, we thank you for being part of this today. So why add a special webinar if we had talked about this last month on a different type of event? Well, we wanted to provide more information and most importantly, direction to give you the confidence to execute this event. And that's what we hope to do in the next 30 minutes. One thing I want to say as we go through this is, like anything in life, whether it's our personal lives or our professional lives, when we have a better understanding of each other's work, we can be more effective advocates. And as we've shared with COA, whether it's me, Nick, James, any of our colleagues, one of the ways that we try to understand what happens in Washington is we go to Washington and we also go to our state capitals. What we started doing several years ago was realizing that we wanted our policymakers to understand the work that we do and actually come and see some of our patients. So we introduced the Sit in My Chair event. And throughout this course, you're going to learn how we do that. So we go to Capitol Hill, we go to state capitals, and we talk a lot about patients and how important and how great our community cancer centers are. But through this event, when our members of Congress or our state leaders come, they get to see that for themselves. So what you can see is this event really is kind of everything I just said. It's helping advocates build relationships. And as we always say, we're very proud of our world-class cancer centers. And this is the great opportunity to do this. So in this photo, this is not a clip bar or any kind of a paid photo. It's actually a Congressman Gus Bilirakis from Florida. And this was him participating in one of our Sit in My Chair events. And of course, many of you are going to notice his mask. This was a photo from the COVID era, but he's sitting there going through experience of being a patient. Next slide, please. So as we talk a lot about the importance of working with both our state and federal policymakers, it's important because they regularly vote on laws that can improve accessibility, affordability, and what we talk a lot about now is transparency in cancer care. So we want our policymakers to stand up to PBM abuses, which we were on Capitol Hill just a few months ago, and we talk about this all the time, talking about PBM abuses. We want them to help us protect access to life-saving medication. And the foundation of everything that we do at COA is making sure that our cancer centers that provide so much value and accessibility remain open. Now I'm going to turn it over to Nick Ferreyros.
Thanks, Rose. And I couldn't have given a better introduction than what Rose just gave. This is really about making it real. I think when you don't eat, breathe, and sleep and live cancer, and cancer care, it's very easy to think of it like, your standard doctor's office visit, and it's sort of an easy thing, and the operations are easy, and what's happening is easy in the practice, and we all know that's not true. So demystifying what's happening in the practice is really important, and showing them all of the real people there. One of the other sort of important factors, I think, is that these are, community oncology practice is a small business, and lots of businesses in this country get to go and advocate and talk about the impact of regulation and policy on their business. We can do that too. Practices employ a lot of people. They're a powerful voice and a powerful constituency. So it's very important to do this. And the purpose of this webinar is really to help show you how easy it is. Right? We have 18 slides, but they're really just sort of a flyover of what this is. It's very simple, and as you see later as we go through this, you'll see that doing a Sit in My Chair event is very simple. But why do we need to do a Sit in My Chair? Well, here are some humorous things on this slide, but it's a very serious matter when people who don't understand what you do, who don't understand what your patients are going through, who don't understand what everybody involved in cancer care and in the cancer journey experiences, when they're making those decisions, they don't necessarily realize what the real world impact can be. And there's a lot of that happening, from the actual law to the implementation of the law, the regulation to the oversight of it. And I also draw your attention to this last bit right here where, 60% of Hill staff are under 35 and stay in the job for 3 years. The point of that is to say, the people who are writing laws in this world are not the experts. They are often juggling lots of different priorities, lots of different issues, dealing with lots of different things, and they're jumping between issues. And so they can't sort of get that deep dive. And there's a lot of turnover. So what you taught somebody last year may be completely different than what you're going to teach them this year. Or there's a different person in the office that rotates into that role. So the point of this slide is to say, you may have made contact with your member of Congress at one point or your state representative at one point, but you need to keep doing it because, they can't help you if they don't know you. And if they don't know you, they are unable to reach out to you and learn, hey, is this PBM bill, does this make sense? Or, hey, we're dealing with copay accumulators right in this session. We don't really understand that. What does that mean? So the point of this is to say, your voice matters because people don't necessarily understand the issues you're doing. There's often new voices and new decision makers in the place, and you have a lot of that wisdom and knowledge to share. And when we talk about advocacy, people are often like, "Oh, I need a script. I need to know what I'm going to say." You're just talking about the value that you bring. The importance of what you provide, that it's personal care, that it's in the community where your patients live and work, that it's high quality, that you're proud of it, that it's cutting edge and saving lives. And then, you also know that in the grand scheme of things, it's affordable. Community oncology, independent cancer care is the lower cost site of treatment that brings all these other values to it. And so what we're really doing is advocating for the fundamentals, advocating on the core issues of what community oncology is. And so, don't get so bogged down on what you're going to say or what to say. It's very simple. You are showing them what you do. You're talking about the benefit and the value of what you provide. You are making your practice a real thing versus this sort of number on a sheet or just a dot on a Google map. They now recognize that this practice in their district that they represent as an elected official has very real issues and very real people there. So how can you advocate, right? Obviously, there's Sit in My Chair. That's this big program that we have. But there's lots of different ways you can do it too. So if a Sit in My Chair program, just doesn't work for you this session, although we do hope it will, and we'll show you how easy it is. You can be doing it in a couple of hours of time. But if that doesn't work for you, there's other ways. First off, follow what we do. COA's got lots of resources. We put out a monthly newsletter. We put out two. We put out one for our CPAN patient advocates. We put out one for the COA network writ large. Get involved, follow what we do. We also, you can do something as simple as calling them. You don't have to have them come to your practice. You can just call your elected officials, your elected representatives, and give them a piece of your mind. Do it politely, just like you would if you were in person, but you can let them know your thoughts on perspectives on issues, because oftentimes, if not, it's just a highly paid lobbyist doing that. But remember, you are the boss. You elected them. You pay their salaries. You pay the staff salaries. Be polite, but they work for you. And so your perspective is important, and you deserve the respect of having your perspective heard.
Nick, may I add something? This is an excellent slide, the follow the issues in particular. I know anyone who I've worked with CPAN, whether it's advocates, nurses, doctors, I always say, I understand how exciting it is to go to Washington, D.C. or go to the state capitol or be a presenter. That's an exciting form of advocacy. But what you're saying here, reading our emails, reading the newsletters, that is advocacy because you're getting engaged and you're getting educated. So I think that's a really powerful. I think they're all great, but I really love that third bullet point.
Thanks, Rose. Yeah, being knowledgeable and following the issues. That's the first step of everything. Now, of course, as you've heard us say a couple of times, it's not just federal, it's also state. That's why we have James here today. State policy is so hugely important in everything you do. And as you see here, a few of our stats, there are far more state and local elected officials than there are federal officials. Now, granted, federal decisions vastly outweigh the impact of state and local, but just because something impacts all of Medicare or all of the federal government doesn't mean that state issues can't make a huge difference. And I'm going to let James chime in a little bit about the importance of state advocacy.
Yeah, that's right. So I think something that's important to remember as you, begin thinking about whether or not you want to invite elected officials to your practice to speak with patients, to speak with staff on site, is to understand, first of all, whether or not the issue that you're wanting to discuss or the issues that you would like to highlight are state or federal issues. Often we find that there's a mix of issues that are impacting patients and practices all across the country, and some of those issues can only be resolved at the state level, others can only be resolved at the federal level. That's really why COA is here, to help you understand the difference between the two and help you identify which lawmakers you might want to reach out to for a potential site visit with Sit in My Chair. So, I think as you move forward with your ideas and your plans for the future, definitely please connect with us. We're here to help you and help you figure that out.
Yeah, I think that's a really important reminder too, right? Here on the Zoom are the three faces of the people who can help you make this happen. Our entire reason for existence is to provide support to the practices. I often focus on the federal level. James is our state policy lead. He focuses on the state level. Rose on the patient and caregiver advocacy side. So you have a very powerful team behind you. Reach out to any of us. If you don't have our email addresses, they're on the COA website. We also have the general info@coacancer.org email address that we'll show a little bit later. But you can reach out to anybody at COA. They will pass along your emails to us. We can tell you who the right person to contact is. We can tell you who their staff members are. So we're really here to help out and guide that process for you as much as you can. And I think one other sort of selling point in focusing on the state level, and this is a stat that James is always talking about, is that only really 1 to 4% of all the bills, all the legislation that gets proposed in the United States Congress in Washington, D.C. ever become law. At the state level, it's 5 times that. It's about 20%. So 20% of all state bills are passed, whereas 1 to 4 federally get passed. That's a huge difference, and that means that your opportunity for engagement, your opportunity to influence change is so much greater. So definitely do not forget your state policymakers. And in fact, they're often a little bit easier to get there and to get there on site and to come visit your practice.
So thank you, James and Nick. That's such a good example and descriptions of everything. So what is Sit in My Chair? Okay, we're talking a lot about this, and it's not because we want to keep saying the same thing over and over. And we do want to keep saying the same thing over and over because it's so important. It's our signature event. It gives Congress an opportunity to see community oncology firsthand and to hear all the positive aspects of community oncology. In this photo at the right, this is a woman who is a nurse at one of our major cancer centers. And as you can see from the photo, she's holding a photo up of when she was a patient. And that is very, very powerful. So she's in person. This was in Washington, D.C., looking as she does now, polished and professional. And then she has her photo when she's a cancer patient. And that's a very, very, very powerful image. And her getting to tell that story is extremely impactful. So that's what we mean by the face-to-face advocacy. And it does make it very real. As you can see from the headline too, the whole purpose of this mock experience is to help our elected representatives feel what it's like to be a patient. Now, I've said this before, we know that unless you truly have been a patient, you don't get 100% experience, but you get a very, very good experience, and that's our aim. Next slide, please. So what do you do during the mock cancer treatment? Well, what happens is we really, someone from the practice, we usually have a nurse, an oncologist, and one of our CPAN chapter leaders, if you have a CPAN chapter, meet the representative in the lobby. And from that point, they do not get escorted and given like the highest level treatment. We treat them very well, but we actually have them sit in the waiting room, and the receptionist will call them up, and it will proceed to the next step where the cancer patient, and the mock cancer patient gets taken to the back room. And sometimes when you go in that back room, you have to wait a few minutes, but it's really, really important. And again, throughout this process, as we're taking our member of Congress or our state representatives through this experience, we're also weaving in the accurate, positive information about the value that our community cancer centers bring. And again, these are not stock photos. On the top photo, some of you may recognize Dr. Lucio Gordon, and the individual on the bottom are some of our advocates from one of our New York practices. Next slide, please. Again, these photos are all, again, not stock photos. Some of you may have seen them before, and if you see them again, it's because we think these were just absolutely incredible pictures. The photo on the left, we talked about that in one of the opening slides. That's Congressman Gus Bilirakis going through the experience of being a patient. On the top right, many of you know Dr. David Eagle. He's been an incredible advocate and very active with COA for many, many years. And you can see now he's not in the role. He is actually a physician. So he's explaining to our congressman in New York what his role is as a doctor working in a community oncology practice. And again, the photo on the bottom, another favorite photo. I know many of you have seen it. And why do we keep showing this photo? Because it's so impactful. This was a visit by one of the state representatives, and the woman on the left might also look familiar. She's one of our CPAN chapter leaders. And to make this visit even more impactful, they were holding a bag with over $100,000 of drugs that were wasted. And you can talk to someone about that on the phone, but when you're actually holding a bag of medications, that's extremely powerful. Next slide, please. And I believe this is where I go back to Nick. It is where I go back to Nick.
Okay, so let's get to the meat of this, right? So we've said how easy it is, and it really is easy. We've updated our toolkit this year. We have a sit in my chair toolkit we've been using for, probably at least 15 years. Mm-hmm. And we've updated it a few times over the years, and this year we gave it a complete refresh. It's very, very simple. It's 3 pages. There's a template email that you can use to reach out to invite them, a simple step-by-step planning guide, and then tips and talking points. It's very easy. You can find it here at this URL. You can also scan the QR code. We do require you to sign up for a MyCOA account. That's free. It's easy to do. The only reason for that is because if not, then everybody would just come to the website and steal this content. And we like to know who our users are, but it is free for everybody to do. It's very, very simple. And the step-by-step guide is, as I said, 3 parts. Invite them, plan them, and then do it. It's not that hard. All you got to do is invite them to visit your practice, give them an advance notice. As you'll see in a little bit, there's a really good opportunity coming up in August as your members of Congress go on their summer recesses. They come back. It's an election year. Everybody wants to be out there shaking hands and kissing babies. And nothing's better than some photos at a cancer center that shows that they're doing something. You plan the visit with your team and your staff, and what you're going to show them. As those photos showed, there's a lot of different options. There's sitting down and just talking to them. There's going through the patient journey, which we recommend because it really shows the complexity of what a cancer journey is. Or there's the show and tell with $100,000 worth of wasted drugs in a bag. There's lots of different ways to do it, but the point is to make it real and memorable.
Nick, if I would add something too, yeah. All those are fantastic reminders and the visuals. But what some of our practices have also done is they will regroup for maybe 5 or 10 minutes in the conference room if you have one, or out in the hallway. And they will, recap all the issues that we're talking about, but they will also say, what did it feel like to be a patient? Would you want to be treated in this kind of cancer center? And that's another great thing that you can also add to how you want to do the event. Yeah,
there's a lot of ways to do it. I mean, there's no secret to this, right? And I think that James will tell you half of what we're doing is trying to let people understand that, we weren't born and bred to be advocates, and Rose too. We weren't born and bred to be advocates. It's a role that we've fallen into in our careers, but it's very easy to do. It doesn't take an advanced degree. So first step is, who are your elected officials? And this is a very important one. I just went through this with another practice where they actually identified the wrong member of Congress in their region. And so we had to work with them onto that. Go to, there's a lot of different websites. USA.gov is a great one. The League of Women Voters has a great one. Just Google, who is my elected official, and that'll help you. Oftentimes on the websites, they ask you to put in an exact address, because sometimes it can be across the street. That's how close these maps are drawn. So just make sure you have the right person. And then once you do that, the game is on. You can find their contact information online. Their schedulers are usually the people that you want to talk to. Schedulers, I say in quotes because there's different titles for it, but these are the people that plan out the officials' calendar. And then schedule it in advance. As I said, August is a great time for federal lawmakers because they are all on vacation in August in recess. And they'll be in district, meaning at home, visiting constituents, having meetings, doing fundraisers. So it's a great time to schedule something. And you can get that. State calendars vary a lot as well. I know that the state legislative calendars, sometimes they're in session and not. James, what would you recommend on state calendars?
That's right. So at the state level, we have about 10 states that meet year-round. But outside of that, all the rest of the states have varying schedules. Really the best way to decide when and to understand when your lawmakers, your state lawmakers are in session at your state capitol building is to go to your state legislature, state general assembly, go to one of those websites. Depending on your state, you have different names for it. And just review the calendar, see what dates they are in session on that website. It'll tell you. But also, we're always here to help you identify your lawmakers and to help you understand when is the best time. So again, I just want to reiterate that please reach out to us when you're planning these. We're here to help.
Thanks, James. And then, as we've given a lot of examples of what that can be, our recommendation is the patient journey. You can do this as long or as short as you want. Some practices, sometimes you get an hour of people's time. Sometimes you get only 30 minutes or 15 minutes, in which case you can sort of do a shortened tour of the facility, let them see what it's like, and talk to them about your issues. That's really important. And, we make sure and say here, introduce the lawmaker to their constituents, because this is an important fact. Oftentimes people think, oh, let's just show them the building and each of the different rooms. But don't forget, everybody in those rooms, everybody behind the scenes in the building, everyone in the practice is a voter. The patients are voters. And what you'll often see, politicians are very good at schmoozing. They love to shake hands and talk. And you'll often see them stop and talk and have deep, meaningful conversations about what people are going through. And this is what we talk about when we say make it real. This is really taking these, the voters, which is sort of a vague term, and saying, oh no, it's Mary from Des Moines, and she's there and she's getting treatment for breast cancer. And I remember her talking about her insurance company that denied her drugs and how hard it was for her. Yeah. And then that individual recognizes issues that they have an opportunity to address. And that brings us really to the last sort of important bit of this is have something you're asking them for. These are just 3 examples that we throw out, but you can make it your own. You have an issue, your leadership has issues, you can decide in advance what it is you're going to ask, but have an ask, because nobody just likes a complainer. People want to solve problems. Yeah. And especially your elected officials, they want to be able to serve as a resource for you. So ask them for something. Don't be shy. Be direct. They know what they're there for, that they're there to work on behalf of their constituents. So have an ask. We're happy to work with you on that. We're happy to help define that. We track federal legislation every single day. We track state legislation across the country every single day. We can tell you what the political landscape is like if you really want to get that deep in it. We can tell you, hey, suggest they support this or tell them to do that. But have an ask, have something clear that you're doing.
Again, thanks, Nick and James. I want to just make a couple of comments about some of the things that you said, Nick. You had a slide where we had the example of the toolkit. And we're always at COA, we're always trying to improve ourselves. And Nick made the reference that, historically we've had earlier versions of the toolkit and it was much longer. So I've had conversations with some individuals who are interested in doing this at their practice, and they had a hard time understanding that it can be this simple. So the language that I always use is, don't overthink it. And Nick, you said something very similar, like don't get bogged down in thinking about what you're going to say. Sometimes it really is that simple. And, again, we're all here to help you. So it's very easy sometimes to get immobilized. I understand that, but it truly is that simple. And look at this, these 3 pages, we curate that information just to give you what really matters. Just like we do this is a special webinar, we're trying to do it in 30 minutes. And just because we do it on a short time frame does not minimize the impact. So really don't overthink it. And then also, Nick, on one of your slides where you mentioned identifying the state representatives, and you had a couple of resources. I really like, I know they're all good, but in terms of simplicity, I really like the League of Women Voters. Because when you put in your address or whatever, just basically on one screen, you can see everyone from our current president all the way down to your representative at the state level. It's all in one shot. So that's really good. So again, thank you to all of our listeners. Now's your opportunity to ask us any questions, and you can send that through the chat.
Yeah, there's a lot there. James, I have one question to start us off with while our audience, and we'll try to end this right at 12:30, but do we have to wait for our state policy, so our state legislature to be in session in order to invite them, or are people happy to come throughout the year?
Absolutely not. Working with state lawmakers, it's great because there are frequently opportunities for you to invite them to the practice, to meet with patients, and to speak with your staff. They are, if you haven't worked with them yet, I see a few folks on the call who have, but if you haven't worked with your state lawmakers yet, they are very accessible. They live in your communities. They're not away in Washington, D.C. Yes, they work sometimes at your state capitol, but often, you'll see them on the weekends when they come back to their families. You'll see them at church. You'll see them at a grocery store. There are many opportunities for you to engage your state lawmakers, and they're very happy to come out and see the work that you're doing that's benefiting their constituents within their district. They want to know what the problems are that you're facing and how they can help you, right? So that they can continue to talk to their constituents and say, look, I'm advocating for your access to healthcare.
That's great, yeah. Okay, and one last question before we end. Rose, what is the role of patients, patient advocates, survivors, and even CPAN chapters in this? What can the role be?
Well, I'll start with the CPAN chapter. So kind of at the macro level, for those cancer centers that do have a CPAN chapter, you'll be very happy to know that your CPAN chapter leader will be running the show. And when I say running the show, she'll be doing all the organizing, she or he working with me directly. So it's super, super easy to do. In terms of patients, Nick, you mentioned that as the member of Congress or state representative goes to the cancer center, there's going to be those live interactions. But in terms of the patient, we will generally have 1 or 2 patients that are part of the experience that are going to come in specifically for that role, to share what their experience is. And it's just an incredible opportunity.
Great. We have a question, and then we'll wrap up. Has anyone tried to get their state insurance commissioner to the clinic? And I'll expand on that a little bit and welcome James's thought and Rose's thoughts as well. But I think your state regulators are an important constituency and an important voice that you can have. Everyone's going to be different. Some are going to have no interest in it. Some are going to be not at all interested. They also have staff that could come and do the visit as well, and professionals there. But even someone like the state attorney general, We've had a number of states launch PBM investigations,
Mm.
and their state attorney generals have put out really important things. When you're doing those types of visits, it's a little bit different, right? I think you're talking about your issues, you're talking about things, but then you also want to serve as a resource and be able to serve as somebody that they can come to for questions when they're doing investigations or when they're trying to dig into an issue and learn more. Oftentimes with federal offices, we're often getting questions from the regulatory agencies about issues. And you can tell what they're trying to do is learn more about the intricacies of this, because so much of what we do is complex and complicated. They're trying to figure out things. So I don't know if anyone's actually had their state insurance commissioner. I would guess yes, because that is such a straightforward one to want to invite. But it's definitely an audience worth seeking out.
Yeah, I think, I think this is one of those case-by-case bases where I would recommend meeting with members of whatever regulatory body is the oversight for the issues that you're wanting to address within your state. Actually, I would recommend working with those individuals at their state capital. But again, right, it's case-by-case basis. Every state is different. And so, that's what we're here for, right, to kind of help you determine whether or not that's a good ask, or like Nick mentioned, maybe, right, there's a different lawmaker that you may want to ask also. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Great, thank you. We're just a couple minutes over time, so we'll wrap up quickly here at the end. Rose, James, thank you very much. I think I'm actually stealing your slide, Rose, so sorry
That's
about
okay.
that.
I just have one quick ad. Just one quick ad, since we want to keep you educated and engaged. Coincidentally, tomorrow is our monthly advocacy chat, and we're going to be talking about another really important issue to COA, and that's health equity. 12 noon Eastern time, you can register on our website.
Yep, that's
Thank you
great.
for
And
being with
don't
us
forget, we're here as resources. Our goal is to make this easy. It is easy, but we can make it even easier if you need. So please reach out and let us know if we can be of help. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.